Much indeed for your call. Nick Freeman is a lawyer known as Mr. Loophole. Hello, Nick.
Morning, Jonathan.
Do you think we should be more or less accepting of e-scooters?
We need to accept them. They're going to happen, but we need regulations in place. And they're actually subject to exactly the same law as it currently exists for motor cars. So there's a penalty point system, there's disqualification, speed limits, drink drive limits, etc., etc. But the big problem, and your previous listener touched upon it, is identification. And in any one time, when you see a car, we know who's driving because there's a system from a registration plate that emanates from a registration plate. And we need something in place to replicate that so that everyone is accountable. If they're accountable, they'll be responsible. So if, for example, someone makes contact with someone, which is obviously a very serious situation, and drives off, that's at least a due care. It's a fail to stop and fail to report. It carries potentially a custodial sentence, coupled with up to 10 penalty points. That person's got away with it because we've got no means of identifying that person. And it's interesting to note also, Jonathan, you'll be aware of this, that e-scooters are illegal on our roads. The only ones that are currently legal are the trial bikes that are being put out across the country. They're limited to either 15.5 miles an hour or in London 12.5 miles an hour. And you've got to be a full license holder, provisional license holder or moped license holder to drive them. You don't have to take any particular test. The design of these bikes is dangerous themselves because the wheels are too small. We don't have the infrastructure in place. And the problem is, most of the bikes that you see, these scooters that you see on the roads, are illegal. They can go up to 68 miles an hour.
68 miles an hour?
68 miles an hour. They're rife for crime. Only last week, a friend of mine had her handbag stolen as she was going into a hotel. And anecdotally, you hear everyone knows someone who's had either a phone or a handbag taken. So, it's a huge problem. And what we hear in London, there was the trial opened in 6 boroughs in London on Monday, the 7th of June. The Met are seizing 6, and I know this doesn't apply to your area, but just to put it into perspective, they're seizing 4 e-scooters a day, illegal e-scooters a day. Now, there are thousands on our roads at any one time. And what we need, as well as identification, is we need the police to get tough with people who use them illegally because it's very serious. It's a little analogous to having a car and taking a number plate off or putting a false plate on. You're totally unaccountable. You're going to get away with blue murder, literally.
But it's difficult, isn't it? Because, we've had the situation before in this part of the world with the off-road bikers.
Yep.
Certainly in parts of Bedfordshire, we haven't heard so much of it recently, but there was a time when we were absolutely plagued by these off-road bikers who were riding these off-road bikes on pavements, down high streets, in parks, putting people in huge amounts of danger. But of course, what are the police supposed to do? Because they don't know
who it is, do they?
Well, they don't know who it is, and how are you supposed to chase one down an alleyway when you're in a Ford Fiesta? That would be the same with a scooter.
The police need to get up to speed, and they need to. We do have police on cyclists, although some of the police don't look that fit. But the police need to have e-scooters as well. They need to be flexible to deal with the crime as it presents itself. It's no good saying, look, we're going to put tens of thousands of e-scooters on the road, and they're going to be cycles as well, bikes as well. And I am suggesting that we have exactly the same registration system for cycles as currently exists for cars, so that there's one rule for everybody. And then at least we'll be accountable. And I think if you make people accountable, there is a level of responsibility that goes with that. And that has to be the starting point. And you mentioned cycles. The law that exists for those is woefully inadequate, and the government need to redraft legislation, in my view, have a system similar to cars, that we all have one set of rules that applies to all of us because we all share road space. That's surely what needs to happen.
I hear everything you're saying, and I'm sure many people listening to the programme will agree with it all. They do sound, if they were regulated properly, and if they were safe to use.
Safe and regulated, they'd be fantastic.
I was going to say, they sound great fun, and what a great way to get about. If you were going to make what would ordinarily be a 10-minute car journey, on a nice day like today, why not hop on a scooter, go there, do whatever you need to do, hop on a scooter back home again? It sounds a great way of getting about.
Well, I'd say to you, Jonathan, because we need exercise, and you're much better hopping on a bike.
Well, yeah, but some of us are lazy devils, Nick.
Well, there you go, Jonathan. You've answered your own question. question.
Yeah, but if you're going to if you're going to persuade life's lazy devils out from behind the steering wheel of their car, then you've got to make an alternative that's also appealing to a lazy devil, haven't you?
Well, there's plenty of cycles around, but I agree with you. It's a very convenient, easy, eco-friendly way of travelling, but inherently acutely dangerous because of the way that the lack of education that's going, the lack of identification. So, yes, in principle, they're great, but we really need to tackle these problems before we unleash them on our roads.
OK, really good talking to you. Thank you so much. Nick Freeman is a lawyer known as Mr. Loophole. This person